Welcome to the Fearless Happiness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Naist invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happiness Podcast, and this is Max Naist.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. And yes, again, I'm here with another amazing and special guest, Gissele Taraba. Hopefully I said that correctly. I called
Beautiful.
her Dina earlier. You know what I mean? Like she was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm Gissele. But we laughed about it. Everybody, this is going to be a great conversation. So what I like to do, Gissele, is have you introduce yourself to my audience, like who you are, what it is you do, and then you and I are going to have some fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So my name is Gissele Taraba, and I'm out of Canada. I am a mom of two, and I have my own company. I'm a TEDx speaker, an author of a book that was #1 for conflict resolution for a week, or a few days at least. And currently I am the host of the podcast Loving Compassion with Gissele, where we share extraordinary stories of people who have done, forgiving and loving themselves and loving other people. But the thing I'm most excited about is the documentary that myself and my team are working on, which is called Courage to Love: The Power of Compassion. That's a little bit about me.
I love it, right? Because we need a little bit more love and compassion in the world, at least when it comes, right? Because the media loves to show us all the negative stuff, like, you need to hate that side, or this side needs to hate that side. And, but what I love, right, being a podcast host is I get to interview these amazing people, right? And a lot of them from my neighboring country, Canada, and they all have been, like yourself, amazing guests, so friendly and so open and honest, and right. And that's the way it should be. So let's go back a little bit, Gissele, and talk about like some of those, I like to call them challenges, right? Instead of problems or struggles, like that you faced early on that helped shape who you are. Cause I love to give the audience a little backstory of where you've come from and what you've overcome to be successful like you are.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, I'll take you back a little bit further out in terms of my childhood. So I grew up with parents that were both sort of traumatized. My mom faced a lot of child abuse and neglect. And in fact, that's what motivated me to work in the child welfare system for a very long time. And I thought I was going to live and die there. That was my dream since I was 15. I was going to go and rescue other parents like my parents and rescue other kids like me. And I thought that was going to be the thing. But life and God and Source Universe had other plans for me. I was doing that work, and at the same time, I was experiencing burnout. I was experiencing challenges at work. I was personally experiencing a lot of anxiety and stress. And I had been doing a little bit of work on myself. I was meditating. I went to therapy to kind of address I had huge abandonment issues, lots of anxiety. And so at the same time, I was struggling with burnout at work. There was just so many things. If you know anything about the child welfare system, it is a very, very stressful system, stressful for the parents, stressful for the kids, re-traumatizing, stressful for the workers and at all different levels. And so I went on a search to try to help alleviate some of the stress and the burnout that I saw in my staff, because I was a director at a time at a children's aid society. And I encountered compassion. And my interest in it really was to help my staff, but I didn't realize that I was actually helping myself. And so the more that I was practicing mindfulness, the more that I was practicing being kind and loving to myself, instead of being critical, I became nurturing. Instead of being judging, I became curious about myself and my behavior and my thoughts. And the more I did that, the more I became curious and loving and compassionate towards other people. And so I really once I hit on compassion and saw the transformation that was helping me, I really kind of went in head on full steam and tried to bring it into the child welfare system. But I was meeting so many barriers because the system is designed very much on fear. It is very fear based. There are risks. Everything is with a lens of risk, right? And so when you live from a place of fear and protection, there's very little room for love and compassion. There's very little room for curiosity because fear is the default setting. And so I left the organization and chose to do something else. Which is what I'm doing now. Now, in my journey of being more loving and compassionate towards myself, every time I reached a plateau, like I've like, oh, things are good, I'm going, there's a new level of learning and growth. And that's one of the things that people don't often tell you about. You think that you're just like, once I'm loving and compassionate towards myself, it's over. It's not. It's the beginning of a new journey. It's the beginning of a new phase.
Well, anytime you're growing like that, right there, it's not just like, oh, I'm done. Everything's going to be hunky dory, right? Because then, like you said, source, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, will go, aha,
Yeah.
right? Because there was that saying I learned in my early recovery, right? When I got sober was, you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans, right? So many times I did that early on where I'd go, here's my plan. This is what I'm going to do. And then I would get that laugh and go, oh, they're so right. Like,
Yeah.
like you said, working in that environment, right, is it's almost like a lose-lose situation, like you said, because of the way it is set up out of fear, right? Because they say fear and love cannot, be in the same
Occupy
house,
the same space.
occupy the same space, right? It's either one or the other. And unfortunately, like before us and the powers that be have instilled that fear, from previous, all the way to us, right? Even because I know my older brother worked in that field here in America, up in Oregon for a long time. And there was part of me that just said, like, how do you do that? Like, I know it's got to be so sad at times but there was one key thing that I want the audience to take away, right? Is what you said about learning self-love and self-compassion, right? Because if we don't learn to do that to ourselves, it's like the saying, right? How can I love someone if I don't love myself, right? Because it's going to come out like, especially the self-hatred, it comes out in all different areas of our life, right? If that happens to be the case, but so when you discovered because that takes, like, if you were in that field for a long time, right? It's hard to just get up and go, I'm going to do something different. But
yeah,
right, because then the fear kicks in and like, oh, should I do this or not, right? So talk about those challenges as you changed your course, right? Because like you said, I've worked in the mental health field, and sometimes I don't think the support for the staff is there as much as it is for the clients or the patients we work with, right? It's like you take care of them, do your best, and then you're done, and they're like, bye, see you tomorrow, right? Like there's no comfort for us in that field sometimes, you know what I mean? So I'd love to hear how you started carrying this on in your life to make sure that when you went into your new endeavor that, like, this is going to be different.
Yeah. So thank you for that. It's a great question. So the first part is I'll talk about the fact that organizations in the majority of the helping organizations, and this is a mindset shift that I think we all need. The majority of helping organizations are not for profit. And so not for profit means constantly struggling for money. I don't know about the government in the US, but the government in Canada, they were always asking us to do less with more, more with less. So do more with less. We will pay you less, but you got to do more. And so people start to get burned out, especially if they're also advocating for clients. They're also advocating for services that may not be in the community. And so it's sort of like you're trying to stop a flood with a band-aid, right? Like these are just band-aid services. We're not dealing with the things upstream. We're not dealing with the whole. We're not helping people flourish and be whole and complete. We're just patching it up at the end when there's problems. And so the system itself is designed in a way that isn't necessarily about flourishing, it's about gap stopping. And so what I observe with the people I work with, and even in myself, is that when you're at a not-for-profit, you're constantly struggling for money. And it causes sort of like this poverty lack thinking. There's very little imagination. There's very little like, pooling of resources with other not-for-profits. And so one of the big mindset shifts I had to get was that just because I'm in a helping profession, I'm helping people be more loving and compassionate towards themselves, doesn't mean
Right.
it has to be free or it has to be cheap. That's the first part. The second part is, as I said, Max, I did not plan on doing what I'm doing now. This was not my plan. Like you said, like God laughs. So when I met a woman who was bringing compassion into the prison system, and I took some time to chat with her about, like, I was trying to figure out, how do we bring compassion into the child welfare system? Like, how can I make that work? You did it for the prison system. Maybe this could work for child welfare. And she told me her amazing story of how she did it. And out of nowhere, I got this feeling that almost came through me, not from me. Ask her about the book. And I was like, okay. So I just said to her, hey, do you have a book? And she was like, yeah, I got a book. And she told me what the name was. And then, she spoke to me for a little bit more. And then we kind of ended the call. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to get this book as a thank you, because she spent 2 hours with me talking about the compassion the prison system, and she's getting really nothing out of it other than the fact that she was trying to help me do that for child welfare. And so I read this book. This book is about someone who had asked for an extraordinary story of love and thought it was going to be a romantic thing. Ended up going to Belize following a guy, gets kidnapped by a taxi driver, a man posing as a taxi driver, taken deep into the jungle, and is assaulted and is about to be killed when she makes the decision to lean in and get curious and to see that person as a human being so that they may see her as a human being. And it worked. It saved her life. He drove her back to her hotel as if he was a cab driver because he wanted her to be safe, which didn't make any sense.
Right.
But really, that sort of began the podcast Love and Compassion, which is out, because I thought, oh my God, somebody has to hear the story. The story is extraordinary. And that's how even she ended up doing compassion in the prison system. And it's like, it's the ability to face a foe, an enemy, or someone who's harming us and see their humanity and be willing to even get curious about them so that maybe they can get curious about us.
Right.
And so to me, that was so extraordinary. And so I was doing the podcast for a few years, and I was getting more and more interested in love and compassion, like self-love. How do we kind of nurture ourselves? How are we kind to ourselves? How do we reparent ourselves to soothe our nervous system? Because what prevents us from coming closer together and having difficult conversations and engaging in all the things that we want to do, like end racism and end poverty and all of those things,
Right.
is that we don't know how to emotionally regulate during difficult dialogue. So the default setting is we cancel, we shut down, we defend.
Right.
And so I became more and more interested in, like, oh, to me, compassion and love are the solution to our division. It's the possibility of us coming closer together. So I'm lying in bed one night and I'm like, okay, because my work was ramping up. We were in the middle of a takeover by the ministry. And so because I was in a leadership position, I was a director, I was being asked to do more and more and more and really get involved and really help this happen. And so I was lying in bed and I'm like, God, source universe, if you want me to do this love and compassion thing, you need to give me runway, because I can't transition out of this with nothing and just quit. Um, and you need to give me runway, because I can't do both, because I'm either fully committing to this thing or I'm fully committing to this other thing.
Right.
And so very soon after, I got my runway in the way of a very cool package. That enabled me to leave. They gave me an opportunity and I was like, oh, yay, got runway. But that's not the end of the story. So I get runway and I'm coasting for actually a great long time. But then I'm being asked more and more and more to trust as I get to the end of my runway. And that was really hard for me because I did not had a vision of what it was supposed to look like. Because I didn't want to go back to a traditional, I didn't want to go back to child welfare. I didn't want to go get a job. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't even know what a podcast was.
Right.
I'm like, I was getting like this guidance, do a podcast, do this. And I'm like, okay. So it was during that time that I wrote my book, Reimagining Work, because I was like, okay, I need to reimagine what it is the ways that I attract abundance. I need to reshape my relationship with. And I also wanted workplaces to change. I saw a lot of fear in myself. I had a lot of fear too, even when I was a leader, and did things that I regretted in terms of how I manage things. Um, and so I wrote the book to talk about how we could be different, how we could shift out of lack, how we could talk to each other with more compassion and curiosity. And so that sort of led to that piece. And the journey has been, it's been what my husband likes to call dynamic, which is like you don't put a negative spin on it. Like you don't say it's been hard. It's been dynamic in that I'm being asked to trust more and more and more and more every time. And sometimes my fears arise. And the thing about fear and discomfort is we're taught to shut it down. We're taught to shut down those difficult feelings when really the path is through it. It's through with compassion and love for ourselves, with nurturance, and looking at those difficult emotions, allowing them to flow through us, allowing ourselves to release the resistance that usually leads us down a path we don't want. And so as I keep evolving and expanding in my happiness and go towards my dreams, a new level of me is required. Like, for example, for this documentary that I'm doing, it's about sharing very similar stories to the one that I told you. There's many people that I've met because of my podcast that have chosen to love instead of hate, but love things and people that were very hurtful, like somebody murdered this woman's son and she chose to forgive and love him. Stories like that. And so I'm putting them together in a documentary. But that requires a level of me that is more evolved than where I am now, if you know what I mean. It requires a higher level of love, a higher level of compassion, a higher level of faith and trust and courage. And so each step in my journey is an evolution of my soul and of my being. And it comes with discomfort. And the more you get comfortable with discomfort, the more bold and like fearless you become, the happier you do become. So it's not about not having experiences that people deem challenging. That's just a judgment we put on it. This is bad, this is good,
Right.
because we've conditioned that way. It's about navigating the waters and being able to understand that you have more power than you believe and remember. And that can feel very dynamic.
That's why I love guests like yourself, right? Who are teaching that, right? That we are more powerful than we think we are. Because then when like I'm hearing your story about, and there's many stories where like a mother forgives the killer of her child and goes and visits them in prison. And next thing you know, now they're regularly visiting each other, and he's, that he or she has changed his way, even though they know they're not getting out of prison, right? They're trying to be more loving and caring and in turn helping other prisoners, right? Like you see those. Then I always think of, look at Mother Teresa, right? She lived in the slums of India, but that's where she was happiest, helping the poor, right? And bringing that love and compassion to people who weren't getting it, on a daily basis. She was that light for them, right? And you talk about, growing in the discomfort, right? Like, I don't know if you know who David Goggins is, right? But he's one of my favorite. He's an ex-Navy SEAL who's written 2 books, right? First one was called Can't Hurt Me. It's his journey from 300 pounds to becoming a Navy SEAL, right? And then talks about his childhood, which was pretty brutal, right?
Mhm.
But he talks about that. He says, get comfortable being uncomfortable because that's where the growth happens. Right. Because if
Yeah.
we're cruising along, like you and I know, we've been there. Like I know that too now. It's like, oh, yeah, everything's cool. Right. Like, boom. Then the first bump
Yeah.
hits and you're like, oh, no, what do I do? Oh, my God. Right. But as like
Yeah.
you're saying, if we're practicing love and compassion for ourselves and understanding that, life is not always going to be easy, but I'm going to get through this. Right. Then we get through it with some grace and dignity. But what happens is people see that and they go, oh, Gissele, you got to teach me how to do that. Right. And that's what God, source, what the universe wants us to do is help each other, lift each other up. Right. Because like I've said it before on many episodes, where one of my favorite quotes is from Jesse Jackson, which says, the only time you should ever look down on someone is when you're helping them up. And it's one of my,
Mm.
being in recovery,
Mhm.
that was shown to me so many times when I relapsed 4 times. There weren't people going, oh my God, he relapsed, we can't be around. They were like pulling me up and hugging me and saying, you're going to be okay. Just keep going, right? Keep coming back. And right. It's like one of my foundations in my life now. That's kind of what I want to leave for my kids and my grandkids is like, look, you're going to go through stuff, but that's the stuff that's going to make you a strong person, right? And don't run from it. Yes, you're going to be afraid because are we fearless? Not really, right? There's always going to be some fear. I go, but courage is what happens is when you face it and you do it anyway. Because then you're going to get through it, right? Like my
Yeah.
grandson, I love him to death, right? He's the quarterback of his football team. And he's probably one of the shortest kids on the team, right? But he's got a heart of a lion, right? And even though he gets tackled by bigger kids or run down, he's right back up and facing, let's go the next play, like, right? Like he's got that energy. So I get to live vicariously through him since I can't play football anymore. But it's,
Yeah.
hearing you speak of this, right? Because I know that feeling, right? Like I'm slowly breaking off what I've normally done, right? But I'm in that phase where like, okay, I'm afraid, right? What if this doesn't work? But I got to keep going and I got to find a way to keep going. And
Yeah.
that's like, when you're gone and I'm in this room by myself and I'm sitting here going, okay, that was awesome. But now what do I do over here? Because I'm still scared. Like, how do you
Yeah.
help people through that? Like in your documentary, right? And with your podcast, give some examples of what people that you have talked to or yourself, when you find yourself in that situation, give some of the audience like an idea of like what they can do in a moment of where they're going, quit or keep going. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And, fear is a very motivating factor, and doubt really kind of stops the train of our manifestation. It's amazing how just 1 ounce of doubt just sort of like stops the whole thing. Um, when I'm in moments of greatest doubt or greatest fear, that's the moment to stop and really go inward. The moment to allow those feelings to just pass through, like, which means feel the feelings, because often we're trying to suppress the feelings. And the more we suppress the feelings, the longer they linger. I can't remember the research. It said like feelings are supposed to be on like 90 seconds. So they just want to get through. They just want to give us a message.
Right.
And so when you feel the feeling, allow it to pass. Acknowledge it as you would a friend. So you're like, oh, I'm experiencing fear. Thank you, fear, for keeping me safe. And at the same time, I'm okay. I
Right.
got this. We've got this. And it's really important for us to make decisions not out of fear, but out of love or out of a true desire or joy. I like Michael Beckwith's quote, which says, pain pushes until vision pulls.
Oh yeah. I
So if
love
you've
that
got
line.
if you've got a strong vision and you're thinking about something that gives you joy, that's the path. That is your soul telling you that, there's a part of you that is already there, and it's
Right.
calling you. It's calling you. But the mind is always going to tell you that there's going to be a problem. I love using this analogy, and I use it a lot, which is like The mind is like the risk advisor, like when you have a company and you're like the CEO and you've got like all the different people, you got the accountant, and then you got your risk advisor, and you're like, okay, risk advisor, what are the things that could go wrong? And they name you like 1,000 things. But most of the time, the company has a leader, hopefully that they're balanced and they take all of the feedback and they make good decisions.
Right.
But what happens when you have anxiety or when you allow fear to rule is that that risk advisor becomes the CEO and everything is a risk. Everything is dangerous. Everything is bad. Everything is a problem. This is never going to happen. All of those things. And so your role as a being, as the observer, not the person who's actually not the mind, because you're not the mind, because you could stop the mind. So the fact that you could stop your thoughts even momentarily, right? When you're sleeping, you're not really thinking, you're experiencing something else.
Right.
You are you are the CEO and the leader. So you can, with practice, gain mastery over your mind. And then you become a conscious creator, not a subconscious creator. And so when that circumstance happens, allowing yourself to feel the fear, acknowledging, and then actively choosing and saying, you know what? This is my dream. I don't know how it's going to happen maybe today. And today, maybe I feel afraid, but I'm choosing to take a baby step forward. I'm still going to move in this direction. And sometimes people, the more you are authentic and true and truthful with yourself, the better the whole process. Let me give you an example. Some people might not have done what I did, which is ask for runway and then like go knee deep, right? Just take the
Right.
jump after the runway. Some people are going to be like, well, I'm going to hold on to a part time job while I do that, while I do this. That's also works. There's no right way of doing it.
Right.
Know thyself. Be honest with thyself about how much growth you can or cannot manage. If it feels like a chasm between where you are and where you want to be, all you need is the next step. Just ask for the next step, and the source universe will give it to you. Like
Absolutely.
each of us have like a little seed within our hearts, knows all of our biggest dreams. And that seed contains everything we need to know about how to get there. Just like a tree, we're not any different. We have all those seeds. We just
Right.
don't use them. So nobody has to tell a tree how to grow. It has everything it needs, the leaf colors, the size, the type. We are the same if we listen to our higher and inner guidance. We just have to be quiet enough to listen to it and to address our difficult feelings when they come up because they are messengers. Does it feel difficult? Yes, it does. Because
Absolutely.
because I don't know about you, but I wasn't nurtured. I wasn't taught how to manage difficult feelings. I was taught to suppress your emotions. The reason being it's not because my parents were horrible people. My parents were also doing the best they can.
Right.
My greatest awareness was that the reason why they needed me to control my emotions was because they couldn't hold space for them. So they needed me to change so that they could be okay.
Right.
And once I understood that they didn't have any more tools than I did, then I could have compassion for them. Then I could understand, it's not intentional. So we have a whole generation of people that grew up were told to cry it out, like like when you leave the babies in the crib and you just cry it out. It's neglect. That's not a good thing.
Right.
But that's what we were taught. We were taught we're supposed to suppress our emotions. So we have a whole cohort of people that are learning to reparent themselves, that are learning to hold space for their emotions and are learning to emotionally regulate enough to be there for themselves, to deal with difficult but seemingly difficult circumstances, to deal with challenges and have difficult conversations with one another so that we can then come closer together. Because some of the most extraordinary people that I have met have been willing to sit with someone they deemed an enemy and have a conversation. And usually by the end of those conversations, they were no longer enemies. They saw themselves as different. And those people, even Mother Teresa, God bless her soul,
Right.
were not extraordinary. They were just willing to do the work. That's the thing. We think these people, Jesus, Buddha, all of those people were like, oh, they're so extraordinary. But the truth of the matter is, Jesus said, I am the light and the way. He didn't want to be worshiped, he wanted to be followed, which means we are supposed to do the work of
Right.
loving and having compassion for ourselves and for other people.
Right.
It's hard to do the work, but it's a pay now, pay later. Max, honestly, it's a pay now, pay later, because then look at the state of our world. There's conflict, there's war, there's so much division. We feel lonely. If we are willing to have the courage and, like you said, be fearless in the sense of even we willing to engage in dialogue with curiosity, just wanting to understand, that goes a long way towards, bringing us closer together.
I love that because I have a personal example. I'll give it. I won't give names because I don't want to, but
Yeah. Perfect.
in Facebook, somebody post something about our governor here in California, right? And my dislike for him came out, right? Because I'm like, you're saying you've made our state so great, then why, have you driven down like, downtown LA, governor, actually, and I said something like, no, he's a crook or whatever, right? Like, and what happened was someone I know came back at me and said some things, really attacked me. And I was like, I'm not going to respond, right? But then I found like later that day, he had messaged me and apologized. He's like, I'm so sorry, right? And instead of like, because part of me honestly was to fight back, right? Because where I've come from, right? You don't talk, it's fight now, and then you'll deal with it later.
Yeah.
But I let him, and I said, look, you've known me. I'm almost 22 years sober. You know how I work. I said, I've never said anything bad about anybody. I said, but look, I go, I respect your opinion and your rights to your opinions. I go, I've never personally attacked you. I said, but your opinions are your opinions. And so long story short, I said, okay. And then he apologized. I said, apology accepted. I said, much love and respect to you.
Beautiful.
You have your, I wish you the best, right? The old me wouldn't even, it would have been the only message he would have got was like, I will be down by your house. We'll meet, even though he's 10 times bigger than I am, right? And I'm like, but that's the old me, right? And if I didn't learn this love and compassion for myself, I definitely wouldn't have had it for him. Or for, I even had someone reach out and said, you should stop posting all this positive stuff because you know what I mean? In my political, and I'm really don't post any political, but I just disagreed with some of the things they were saying, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm sorry you feel that way, but no, I'm not going to stop, right?
Yeah.
Because if my message can help someone in a bad place turn that day around and make them smile for a minute, then I've done my job. And listening to you, like, right, you talk about that the fight or flight part of the brain, the reticulated activating system, which is our fight or flight. And what I wanted to say to you too is like, that's why mindfulness, I felt when I got taught mindfulness and I actually had to facilitate, groups, right? Because I've never done it until like when I learned it, right? And I started falling in love with it because like you said, I didn't have to have this fear of like these feelings coming in that made me uncomfortable. I would just go, okay, that was uncomfortable, but it's over now, right? Like, and as I practice it more and more and breath work and learning how to control, to go from that sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic, where I can actually quiet my mind and think a little bit rationally about like what I'm going to do, like even right before our interview here, like I did my couple breath, my breath work, and because I still get nervous, you know what I mean? Like, and then, that the imposter syndrome kicks in and, cause I remember like, she's an author, she's a fellow, she has a podcast. I'm like, oh my God, what if I totally mess this up and I can't even speak, right? So I have to calm myself down and go, hey, we're here together. We're going to have a good time, Max. Just calm down. She's going to be sweet and we're going to have a good time and she's going to tell her story. So, but it's amazing. No matter how many times we do this, that's still, but my point is, that's why I thank God for mindfulness. Like it, because I can slow myself down and not get so worked up and go, hey, this is all supposed to happen and it's going to be a good thing. It's not a bad thing. We're not having a debate on something, we're here to bring
Yeah.
value to the world. Giselle and I are going to bring some value
Yeah.
to the world today, and
Yeah.
chill out,
Yeah.
Max. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like, so far, amazing. I've been having such a great time with you.
Mm-hmm. And can I
Uh,
just mention that you've just demonstrated how people can help themselves out of fear? Because what happens when you experience fear and you have a negative thought is then you go down a negative spiral, right? And so you had a thought, and that thought told you imposter syndrome, and you could have had a whole bunch of thoughts. Oh, she's going to think of this, da, 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 and gone downward. And what you
Exactly.
did with your mindfulness is stop the process and go, I acknowledge the thought that came up, not me. I don't need to follow it. Like you said, we're here to have a great time. She's coming on my show. I attract people that are positive because I'm helping, I'm trying, focusing on helping the world. And so I invite people that want to do that. Like all of those things, you talk to yourself upward in a positive spiral. And all of us can do that. All of us have to be willing to do that, but we have to be willing to acknowledge the difficult thought and understand that those thoughts have no power over us. We give our power away to people and things and in even our own thoughts. And so the whole process of mindfulness is taking your power back because your power is only in the present moment. You can't do anything about your past. You can't do anything about a future that may or may not come. Your power is only now, right now. So, what are you going to do with that power? Are you going to focus on joy and living the most out of life? Or are you going to choose to focus on that negative spiral? So, I thought what you just said is a beautiful demonstration of what people can do to help themselves in the moment.
And I think, that's why my practice as a sober coach, life coach / substance abuse counselor has
Mhm.
changed over the years, right? Because
Mhm.
I attract, I guess, the people that God says, oh, I want you to listen to them, right? Because I admittedly, I've admitted before, like when I first started as a counselor, I'm like that old timer, right? AA,
Yeah.
like if you don't work with me and you don't do the 12 steps, I can't work with you because you're going to die. And no, I can't do that. Right. And I'd have
Yeah.
clients look at me and go, Max, you need to calm down a little bit, like relax.
Mm.
But, and then but with any journey, I realized that even in recovery, right? Like freedom from addiction it's an individual journey. It's going to be different for everybody. I love the 12 steps. Don't get me wrong. It's what saved my life. That's why I'm almost
Yeah.
22 years sober next month.
Ooh.
But I understand that other people don't want to do that. Right. And that's
Yeah.
their right. That's why I love mindfulness. That's when, and then I start teaching them mindfulness. And at first they're like, what do you mean acknowledge that I'm afraid? I'm not afraid. Like, especially some of the guys, right? They're young bucks, like,
Yeah.
so I'm not afraid. I go, oh, okay, then let's do this. And they get this gear. Then like, now I got to
Yeah.
prove to them I'm not. And I said, look, none of this stuff is going to hurt you, right? It's just
Yeah.
all I'm asking you to acknowledge that you're in fear or you have some hurt going on. We're not going to sit in it, right? Like, because like you just said, I can't change my past, but what I
Yeah.
do in this moment and using mindfulness makes my future a whole lot better, in my opinion. And that's what I try to teach them, right? But it's
Yeah.
tough in the beginning, right? Because I remember when I first got sober and it was like when people would talk to me in certain languages, right? Like the recovery, I was like the Pee
Yeah.
cartoon, right? All I heard was rah, 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 rah,
I
rah,
know.
rah. And I'm like, I don't understand a word you're saying,
Mm.
right? Look at me, we go, well, you'll get there,
Yeah.
Max.
Yeah.
Just keep coming back.
Yeah.
But this is where, right? Like this is not just about happiness. This is where I get joy, like with a guest like yourself that is sharing what you have been through and that how we are so much alike that we're just trying to teach something that hasn't been taught for a long time. And is just to like, look,
Yeah.
love yourself, be compassionate, right? Because that's going to turn into you doing that for other people. And it's going to make the world a better place in the long run, right?
Mhm.
But I'm not going to make this political, but there's powers out there. I My thought is the more we can practice what you teach and what you're talking about is how we're going to beat those powers that be, because it's going to love will outgrow that more than anything. And that's like one of my missions, right? That's why I love helping people get sober, right? I try to turn their hate and their fear into love, right? Because there's nothing better, like for me, for instance, what's kept me so sober so long is helping others, doing the same, showing them what I did, right? And then that they can do it too. And then loving them during that process, right? Not judging them, because they look at me like, you're not judging. I go, how can I judge you? I was in your shoes. I was you. Like, I still am. I'm one drink away from going backwards. And I go, but I don't plan on doing that. Right.
Yeah.
And which leads to like our conversation today. But I would like for you to talk about your book and like what's in the book and how that could help our audience understand.
Of course, yeah. If you don't mind, before I do that, I just wanted to make this comment because I think again you modeled a very beautiful example of the difference between what we think compassion is versus what it's not.
Right.
So
Okay.
you were talking about when you were first a coach, how the approach you used was more force than power, right? Like it was more like, okay, behind that, what I heard you say was basically there was lots of worries, right? You were worried that somebody was going to die or hurt themselves. And so I like to use this analogy to really hammer home what compassion is about. So imagine you're on a boat, okay? You're rowing a boat and it's a beautiful lake and you see someone drowning. What the majority of us do is row over to the person and then jump in the water with them. What I mean is that we feel the same pain that they do when they're drowning. We drown with them. We feel that emotional pull. We're like caught in their suffering. So that's the equivalent of you jumping out of the boat and into the water. And that's what the majority of people do when they're
Right.
trying to help someone else.
Right.
Compassion enables you to regulate yourself enough to stay on the boat, to extend a hand to the person so that they can get on your boat. Now, the key part here is they may choose not to get on your boat, and that is their journey. That's okay. You're still there holding out your hand or calling someone or doing something, but you're not drowning with them. That is the essence of compassion, the willingness to help someone, but to keep ourselves afloat enough to be able to do it. Because when you're drowning, you can't help anybody.
Right. I love it because that's almost like the airplane analogy, right? If I don't put the oxygen
Oxygen
first,
mask.
I'm by the time I get to my wife or my kids, they're like, dad's on the floor, right? Like it didn't do us any good. Right.
But you have no idea how many people like will witness suffering and they will suffer along. Like if they see kids suffering, they were like, oh, that kid's suffering. That your suffering doesn't help them unless it motivates you to actually move. Like you suffering with them doesn't help them. It only adds more suffering to the equation.
Right.
Emotionally regulate yourself first, be there for yourself so that you can then move to action. How do I send money to Gaza? How do I, whatever you want to do, how do I, adopt some dogs? How do I help someone in a 12-step program? Those things that you are motivated to do can only happen once you regulate yourself enough to then act from a place of love, not one of fear. And I did also want to mention before I talk about the book, I love what you said about like when you're like, the only time you should look down on someone is if you're helping them. I follow this guy. His name is Paul Selig, and he's a channeler. And one of my favorite quotes of him is, when you think you're above someone, you're actually below them.
I love that.
I
Right.
love it so much. I always think that in my head when I think I'm above someone, I'm actually below them. And I'm like, yep, that keeps me humble. It absolutely keeps me humble.
I mean, if you think about that, like that is a humbling quote to remember, right? Because if you're up there, because I mean, we're all guilty of it. We get in these, I've been like that where I've realized like, I think I'm better than this person. And then I get slapped in the face, right? Like God knocks me in the head and goes, no, you're not. You're the same. If not right now, you're actually below him because you're being like that. Right. But like you, it probably taken practice to realize that after like that's what's happening, right?
Yeah. And then one of the greatest things that has helped me have the most compassion for myself and other people is understanding that we're all part of the same divine source. So there's divinity in all of us, even the ones that are not showing their divinity, like you were talking about different powers. even the people that are not showing their divinity and are not showing authentically who they really are, because they still believe that that belief about power equals force, or they still believe in that lack, not enough for everyone. The only way that I can uplift myself is if I step on someone. Those are just old, outdated beliefs that are kind of coming out and wearing out, which is part of what I talk about in my book. So my book is called Reimagining Work. And I talk about, first, I share my journey in like my struggles that I had when my runway was done, in sort of reimagining how I could sort of move to the next phase of something I wasn't really clear on 100% the vision, right? Like, I don't
Right.
know how this is going to look. I've never done a podcast. I don't know. Like, I was learning about loving compassion. And so I wasn't really in it. I didn't know a lot of people that were doing loving compassion work at the time, except the few researchers that I knew. And so I was kind of stuck, right? And so I thought I was going to write a book about loving compassion in the workplace, because that's what I was really focusing on, and that's what I was trying to do within the child welfare system. I ended up writing a book about reimagining how we are ourselves, how we attract abundance, how we perceive, how we act in the workplace.
Right.
And one of the topics I talk about is this concept of power. We have mistakenly believed that force equals power. The more I force, the more power I have. But force is the tool of the powerless. I don't know any truly powerful people that use force to get what they want. When they're truly in their power, they're magnetic. You attract, you manifest, you go through. When you're using force, there's a lot of resistance there. So you're not in your power. And so what we're seeing now, I think, throughout the world in terms of its old type of leadership dying out, because it
Right.
no longer works, right? It no longer works. And so we are seeing it as the reality, but really it's just a giant mirror to all of us, because, and one of the things I mentioned in the book is I had to realize my part of the equation. I had been subject to, you know, bosses that were micromanagers and all of these things. But I was on the other side of the equation. I accepted being micromanaged. I accepted being not valued. And so I had to look at myself and say, where am I in this part of the equation, and is my power?
Right.
And so really reflecting on how we work. I talk about a little bit about forgiveness in the workplace. Why is it so difficult? I talk a little bit about how to compassionately listen and speak. And the book really is a workbook. I put exercises, and that's the core of the book. It's not so much the content as it is the reflecting that you do, which is
Yeah.
talking about your money stories, talking about, like what you learned about like hard work. I used to value myself as a hard worker. And so for me, difficulty meant badge of honor. And so of course I wasn't going to attract ease and grace because I didn't think I earned it. And yet we want ease and grace. So the book really is about reflecting on yourself and the stories and the identities and experiences you've had that have shaped where you have gotten to, and kind of envisioning where you might want to go in the future. I also share a few kind of magical stories that have happened to me of things, how I've attracted and manifested them, just as a dipping your toe in case you're not experienced with manifestation. But that's basically the essence of the book. Not a book I thought I was writing. I thought I was writing a book on just purely compassion in the workplace,
Right.
but really it sort of evolved into something more.
See, that's what I think with my second book, which I'm very proud of, that's going to come out soon, right? At the end of every chapter, I have some like reflection questions and some action
Yeah.
items that people can take, right? I
Yeah.
didn't just want to write a book and go, oh, here's my life. I did that with the first one, right? Like, here's my
Yeah.
story from it. This one, I was like,
Beautiful.
I can look back and go, okay, if I help one person go, wow, Max helped me change my life because of these steps he told me to take, then I'm happy,
Yeah.
right? Then that's like,
Hmm.
to me, that is success, right? It's not
Yeah. Of
always the money. Yes, I'm not, money's always helpful,
course. Yeah. It's
but
in this reality, it is helpful for sure.
right. And to
Yeah.
be able to help like you are and I am, like, it's funny when you talk about the podcast. When I started, right? I'll tell the audience again, they've heard this many times, right? So
Yeah.
I was working on my business, right? Like my friend who died of COVID, God rest his soul, but he was helping me build my website and to start like gaining clients and being, because
Yeah.
eventually I want to break away from a facility and just do my coaching, my private practice.
Virtually. Yeah.
Right. So we were, doing our usual coaching one-on-one call. And yeah, I thought I'm going to because we belong to a mastermind where doing a podcast and writing a book were like being like that. That's one of the main things they wanted us to do. Right.
Yeah.
So I mentioned to him, like, really, it was one of those, his name was Lonnie. I go, Lonnie, I'm going to do a podcast. Like he wasn't paying attention and like, okay.
Yeah.
But the next week
Yeah.
when we met, he goes, hey, Max, how's that podcast going? I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
he heard me. Shoot. I said, well, I'm learning how to do this. He's like, okay. And then, a couple of weeks go by, he'd ask me, and then it was like right before he passed away, actually. He's like, Max, how's that podcast going? I said, well, Lonnie, I'm learning how to. And before I could finish, he was like, effing Max, perfect doesn't mean done. Just do it. And this man never cussed. And I'm like, it was like the universe is going, this is the only way I'm going to catch your attention. And I looked at him, we were doing a Zoom, and I said, okay, but you're going to be my first guest. Right. And he was my first guest. And now I'm
that's awesome.
episodes later. So I know he's looking down. He's proud of me because I kept, and it's funny, like you said, like how when you wrote your book, you were going to write it for compassion in the workplace, but it kind of manifested into something different. Same with my podcast. It was going to be an addiction recovery. Like I'm only going to interview people who are sober and that have worked,
Yeah.
And then I heard the laugh from God again. And he said, nope, this is how this is going down. Right. So I've had people in recovery and I've had people not in recovery. But the theme is what I'm so blessed, like with you here today, is all the guests that I've had that have some kind of struggle or challenge didn't quit on themselves. They took it as a learning tool. And they said, I'm not going to let this stop me. And I'm going to be whatever that looks like, become successful. Right. So, and not like you, I've had some of the, I've had these great, amazing guests like yourself that are just sharing their story. And right. And I at the end of every podcast, I always thank you, God, for letting me have a great interview. Cause these, and then the guests will tell me, you're easy to talk to. And I go, well, you all make my job easy because you guys are great. Right. So I love it. So now I can ask you the questions that I love to ask, right? The ones I don't forget, like we joked about before the podcast. Right. You've written a book, you're getting ready to do a documentary. You've done a TED Talk, which I will talk to you after the podcast, because that's like one of my main goals is to do that before I pass away. But what I like to ask is, I'll start with fearless, right? What does fearless mean to you, Gissele? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
Yeah, thank you. Fearless means to me like complete trust in universe, God, source, like complete, like understanding that I'm whole and complete and I'm always taken care of. Like, so and this is where I am, like what I'm working to attain, which is like, no matter what the circumstances are in my life, I know that everything works out for me. I know that I'm taken care of, that out of that situation, only good will come. And that it's just about experiencing growth. And I also know that I am not just this body. Right. That I am beyond this physical reality, and that I'm something that is unlimited, untouchable.
I had a guest tell me, we are a soul having a human experience.
That's right. Yeah. And so for me, fearless means understanding that this is an illusion and really working from the place of true authenticity of who I really am. My divinity, not just this very limited human being with her limited lens that has all of these things. So that for me, that's fearless.
I love it. I love it. I hope you're paying attention, everyone. That was a good one. So I'll go to the next one. As you can see, I'll move over so you can see. I put a Y in happiness. Knowing I put a Y in happiness, what does happiness mean to you, Gissele? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
So for me, honestly, it comes from within outward. So I really had to learn that as long as my happiness, my joy, my fulfillment came from outside of me, it could be taken away from me. Everything is transitory, right? I'm married, I have children. My children are eventually going to leave the coop. Eventually, my husband and I will separate. One of us might die unless we plan to die at the same time or whatever. I don't know. But when you cultivate feelings of joy, peace, just safety, I had never felt safe in my body like growing up. When you actually get to the point where you can cultivate inner safety within, and that could be a refuge that you go to, nobody or nothing can take that away from you.
Right.
And so for me, happiness is from within. It's a full trust within myself and within God's source energy. It is also allowing myself to truly enjoy my family and my experiences without the need for them to be different. Because that's it. We get caught in that comparison so often.
Right.
And so to me, it's the cultivation of the inner values that lead to the outer reflections. Because all I learned this from experience, Max. I've been in beautiful places. Like I went to Hawaii, I've been to different places. My anxiety was still there.
Right.
I've been to so many different places. Wherever you go, there you are. I could go to the most beautiful, most remote. I could be having whatever with surrounded by a whole bunch of people. But you cannot run away from yourself. And if you're anxious here, you're going to be anxious over there.
Yeah.
And so, and if you're joyful there, you're going to be joyful here. If you cultivate those values that no matter what you have or don't have, no matter who is with or is not with you flourish that from within.
Right.
Nothing or no one can touch it. It's extraordinary. Why I say that I'm there? Not 100% of the time, no.
I love
I'm
it though,
still
right?
cultivating it. Yeah.
That's a lifelong
It's
process.
my
That's
life. It's my goal. It's my
a
absolute goal.
journey, as they say, or not a destination, right?
Yeah.
And that's you just
Yeah.
nailed it because that's now everybody. Now you want not. She just told you why I put the Y in there. She just told you. So I hope you're paying attention because that was spot on. That's the reason I put it in there, right? But I have to. Okay, I'm gonna say this. I say it all the time, right? My grandkids bring me joy and happiness, right? But I usually say like it has to come from within because not always my wife doesn't always make me happy, right? My kids don't always make me happy. My work doesn't
Mhm.
make me happy. But when I see my two granddaughters come up and give me a hug, yes, they always make me happy and bring me joy.
Children are joyful. Children exude a joy that if we don't squash, right? Like so many people have been extinguished by parents, teachers, caregivers. And that's the thing we're trying to reconnect with is that inner light. And if we allow kids to just be themselves and choose to learn from them, they can show us the path to joy and to fun and to release and to, because even if you watch kids, truly kids that it's a big emotions, but those big emotions and allow them to move past. All we have to do as parents is hold space for those difficult emotions, right? So just be a safe net. And if you watch most kids that are very well regulated or have a safe support from their parents, they'll have like, they'll have a meltdown and then they move on,
Right.
right? That's what, or they'll cry. Crying or laughing is a great emotional release. The pent up energy goes out and then they move on. It is us that kind of prevent ourselves from having those emotions that kind of stuff them and stuff them and stuff them and stuff them and put them in this Pandora's box that later on we don't ever want to touch. But
Well,
that Pandora's box gets too full and then it has to come out.
right. Well,
Yeah.
that's like they say, find your higher vibration, right? Like I always say the kids, like that's the vibration we came into this world as kids. That's what we need to get
Yeah.
back to, right? Even as adults.
Yeah.
And right? I've had guests who have gone to India and met gurus where they said, like, you walk in the room and you could just feel the energy because they give off such positive, like you almost start wanting to cry because like they can see right into your soul, right? But that's like they've been enlightened. And that's the journey I think that you and I are on, right? The more we stay authentic and become
Yeah.
our most authentic self is when we find that enlightenment, right? Because you're right. That's why, like I guess I had, he says, like, they're teaching the wrong things in school nowadays. It's like,
Oh my gosh.
it's almost to dim our lights so
Yeah.
that they can be controlled, right? Instead
Yeah.
of letting, as children, I can even remember like when I didn't have fear, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. Like, right.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. The reason why I'm saying that is because I'm writing my second book and I'm writing it with my daughter, and we're reimagining education
See,
because AI is all about content. You don't need to learn any more content. It's all about the emotions. It's all about like the lessons of the heart, if you may. And it's all about the programming we received. The reason why we struggle so much with diversity is because what we were taught is that sameness is what we need. We need people to fit in the box. We need to have a right answer. There's a right and wrong. And so we weren't taught in school that differences were good. Yeah, they use that language, but if you actually look, the assignments, there was always usually one right answer,
right,
right? The kids that were really aberrant, that couldn't sit still, that had problems, they were deemed as bad. Only the kids that could sit quietly and belong
right,
were good, right? And so you are teaching kids without teaching them, without saying, you say differences are good,
right,
but you're not showing them that. You're showing them that sitting down, aligning is the only right way. So people aren't taught to emotionally regulate with differences. They're not taught to flourish with differences. They're not to enjoy differences and different ways of learning. So what kids have been programmed is to dim their light and there's one way of answering. I'm a professor at a university. That's what I also do as part of my quote unquote work in this reality. And I teach my young people critical analysis skills, right? They have to be able to critically appraise things. The majority of my students, and I love my students, they're very brilliant, but they come and they need a right answer to something. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm teaching you. I'm teaching you to listen to both sides
right.
and to be able to analyze. Like a good chunk of my students have a hard time listening to an opposing perspective. And therefore, if you have a hard time listening to an opposing perspective, you will have a hard time being able to critically analyze things. But that's not their fault. They came from a school system that told them there's a right answer, sit in this box. And so we need to change the school system. So my daughter is helping me write this book so that we can finally reimagine it. And because I wanted not outdated perspectives, because I haven't been in school for a little bit.
Right.
So, but I saw it as a parent and as a student. And so she's just graduated high school. And so her and I are co-writing it together.
I love it. I love it. Wow, this has been an amazing time, and I knew it
Oh,
would
thank
be.
you.
But I
Thank
want
you.
to
Thank
ask
you.
you, right? Because I know the audience is curious. If they want to reach out to you, Gissele,
Yeah.
work with you, get your book, whatever the case may be, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So you can go to www.maitricentre.com. So it's maitricenter.com. And it means loving kindness. And there you will find our podcast or documentary. There's a link to the book. It's also available on Amazon. I also did an Audible, and it's my voice to record it. So that was interesting. That was an interesting journey. And so yeah, that's available there. And we are almost finished the second book, but it's not published, not to be published yet.
Yeah, mine's
So
I'm waiting.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely. And you better take her up on this, everybody who's interested, because she just brought it today.
Thank
I
you,
love it. I've
thank you,
had such a
thank you.
good time.
Me
Such a
too,
great
thank
time
you.
with you, but you're not off the hook just yet.
Oh.
So now I get to ask you my favorite question that I ask of all my guests. It goes like this, Gissele. So, what is the one piece of advice that you could give my audience to help them grow as humans and become better people?
Ooh. It's a great question. I'm going to say this. Be willing. That's all you need. And the reason why I say be willing is because the majority of people are not willing, or the majority of people are like, well, I don't know how to get there. When you're trying to manifest something, especially if you're doing manifesting, let's suppose, right? For you to say, I am wealthy when you're poor is too much of a stretch for you. Your container is too small. It just feels so uncomfortable. You're actually going to attract even less abundance. But when you say, I'm willing to expand, I'm willing to be more abundant, I'm willing to heal more, I'm willing to know how to move to the next phase. I don't know how to do it, but I'm willing. The universe goes, oh, there's less resistance. Resistance is the thing that prevents us from getting there, because we may have beliefs about money. We may think that if I have a lot of money, then I'm going to be seen as a bad person, or people will take advantage of me, or I'm going to lose my friends.
Right.
And so being willing opens up the space without so much resistance. And it enables the universe to go, okay, so here's the next step, and the next one, and the next one. Going from here to 100 and saying, I'm abundant, I'm a millionaire, I'm totally, completely healthy, if you don't feel that way, like all of those things might be too much of a stretch for someone, but just being willing to be more loving, being willing to be more compassionate, being willing to forgive, even if you don't know how to forgive, being willingness just opens the crack, just to enable the universe to start moving you forward.
Right. There's a kind of a similar quote that I learned in recovery that it says, willingness opens the door, even if it's a little bit, to opportunity. Right.
Yes.
Right. Because I remember I used to be that
True.
stringent, like, I'm going to do this. And then I wondered why I relapsed 4 times. Well, yeah, because I was stretching myself and I wasn't being my authentic self, to be truthful. Right. I wanted to look good instead of feel good. Right. I wanted everybody to like me and blah, blah, blah. But I love that. That's awesome. You heard that, everybody. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of willingness to open that door. And then that's when the whole world opens up for you. So like it has for me, and having this amazing guest, Gissele, with us today. Thank you so much for being
here. Thank you.
I've had such a wonderful time. Thank you. We'll have to do this again when your second book comes out. And if you want,
that'd be awesome.
Bring your daughter on too. We'll talk to her. I'd love.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, that would be so amazing.
But again, thank you for being here. So you heard her, everybody. If Gissele made you think, if Gissele taught you something, if Gissele made you smile, and my famous, if Gissele made you go, I like that, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review so more people can find the podcast. And again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happiness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happiness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnijst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happiness.